Hello, BookTube. Recently, a number of booktubers that I follow have been discussing the hardest books that they've read. They've limited this discussion to 5 books because the instigator of this discussion, Paul, the accidental bookseller, has he originated this discussion as a tag. So the idea is to talk about the 5 hardest books you've read. Um, the booktubers who I've subscribed to and who have talked about the 5 hardest books they've read are Alan of Big Hard Books and Classics, Greg of Another Bibliophile Reads, Angelia of Read and Reread, and Pat of Book Chat with Pat. I will leave links to everybody in the show notes down below, as well as a list of the 5 books that I mentioned. So, as I was trying to come up with my own grouping of the 5 hardest books that I've read, I had an initial idea of what I wanted to talk about. But one of the books, the first one I was going to talk about, I don't think quite matches the criteria. From my understanding, I think the difficulty is meant to be more technical and structural and stylistic than it is thematic. But I could be wrong. But I think the idea is that the work itself is difficult rather than you're not liking the book or you're spending more time fighting with the book or the author over the themes than you are reading the book. So I retooled my list, and I have a new, this is, I think, my list for 5 of the hardest books that I've read. Let's just go with that. So, first up, and I think I have these listed in chronological order, which does make a nice bookend, if I'm being honest. So I'm happy with this. Okay, so first up is Mrs. Dalloway by Virginia Woolf. This novel is about a housewife of the upper middle classes named Clarissa Dalloway. She is preparing for a party. And over the course of her day, she goes out to make orders, to go on visits, and various other characters that she interacts with also go about their day and have their own stories. And the narrator dips in and out of everybody's consciousness. Sometimes those thoughts are tangential, and sometimes they reveal character and build a strand of events that ultimately come together at the end of the novel. And this novel, I think, is difficult because of the nature of dipping in and out of the various characters' consciousnesses and seeing their thoughts revealed. Some of these thoughts are remembrances of the past. Some of them are more mundane concerns of the present. Some of these thoughts are the signs that somebody is very mentally disturbed. And it is just an amazing experience. I've read this novel twice. I first read it for a class about 20 years ago. More than 20 years ago now, and I remember rather enjoying it. And then last year, I tried to have a reread of it, and it didn't work out the first time. But then I came back to it in December and really rediscovered my love for this novel, and I'm very happy about that. It is an amazing book. So second is The Rat by Gunter Grass, translated from the German by Ralph Manheim. This is a weird novel about a film producer who is working on a film adaptation of various fairy tales, while he's also having a dream or a recurring dream of him being the last human alive, orbiting Earth in a space capsule, while on the surface of Earth, rats have evolved into sentience, into intelligence. And the rat that the main character interacts with is a rat that he received as a Christmas present. Also involved are a group of women who are going on a scientific knitting expedition. And things get more complicated from there. I shockingly read this book back when I was a teenager. And I don't quite remember what I thought of it. I remember it was exceedingly complicated and difficult. And a few years ago, I repicked this novel back up and tried to give it a reread, and did not make much success of it. And tried it again, and did not have much success with that then either. But I'm hopeful that I will finally manage to reread The Rat and make some head and tails of it. Next is The Black Book by Orhan Pamuk, translated from the Turkish by Maureen freely. Now, for me, I think probably My Name is Red by Orhan Pamuk is a more difficult book to read, or harder book to read, but I have not successfully read it yet. I have given it a few goes and I have failed to finish it. Hopefully I will correct that soon, but we shall see. So for the moment, The Black Book by Orhan Pamuk, translated from the Turkish by Maureen freely, is one of the hardest books that I have read. So this is a novel about a lawyer who is traveling around Istanbul looking for his missing wife and cousin who have seemingly run off together. Interspersed with his search, which itself leads to some very weird moments to parse, are chapters that look at various facets of Istanbul in a way that is both interesting but also hard to grasp. And ultimately where the two kind of come together is interesting. So this is my third choice for one of the hardest books that I've ever read. Next is Omeros by Derek Walcott. This is a long poem that transposes certain stories of Greek mythology, namely the conflict of Hector and Achilles, to St. Lucia in the Caribbean. So there are a number of characters who are inspired by Greek mythology. Aeschyle, Hector, Helen, Circe, Philoctete. Also, the poet himself is a character in this poem who is looking, I think, into his family history, if I remember correctly. There's a historical flashback to a sea battle. Also, there's a retired British Army officer and his wife who have moved to St. Lucia, who employ Helen as a housekeeper, and he's doing research on the history of the island as well. So it's all very complicated pieces that come together. Been a while since I last reread it. And the fifth book of the hardest books that I've ever read, and perhaps the hardest, is Duck's Newburyport by Lucy Ellman. So Duck's Newburyport is about an unnamed narrator who was an academic. She was an adjunct professor at a local college before she developed cancer and took off, quit her job to deal with cancer treatments, and then never returned. Instead, to supplement the family income, she has become a home baker, home caterer. With a number of local restaurants and coffee shops and grocery stores kind of hiring her to make pies and cakes and cinnamon rolls for them, rather than having an in-house baker or pastry chef themselves. So the novel is told in the first person, and basically for most of the novel, the reader does not leave the narrator's head. It's basically just thought after thought, many of which are tangential, and over the course of the novel, there are snippets of both remembrances of her past as well as what she is currently doing. So, through all of the random thoughts, there is character development and a progression of some kind of plot. Also interspersed with the narrator's thoughts is a more traditional narrative about a mountain lioness who has recently given birth to a litter of kittens. And during a major rainstorm, her kittens are rescued by some humans, and the mountain lioness goes in search of them. And so this eventually interweaves into the main storyline. And for the narrator's section, it is basically one long sentence. So this is definitely probably the hardest book I have ever read, because it is easy to get lost or to be alienated by the novel unless the poetry of the thoughts kind of hook you. And I said that I had a nice bookend because I think in a way Duck's Newburyport is the epitome of what Virginia Woolf tries to do in Mrs. Dalloway. Just a single person's mind rather than a whole group of people's minds. So those are some of my 5 hardest books that I have ever read. Anyway, BookTube, I thank you. Have a great rest of your afternoon, and I will see you next time.